Good morning. This is Mr. Murray coming to you from my dining room on March 26th at 11:30 in the a.m. For people who show up late or people watch this later on, I also uploaded the notes that I'll be going over today onto Google Classroom. Hey, a whole bunch of us. All right, look at that. Welcome, the three of you guys. Just You missed me saying this a second ago, but I uploaded all the notes that I'll be going over throughout this half hour on Google Classroom. So if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can go on Google Classrooms and it's there. Also, I'm going to start giving extra credit for people who show up to the YouTube live events. So I'll just take your names down and I'll make sure you guys get some extra credit for that as well. So welcome. Okay, so today we're going to go over scene one in Act Two of Anne Frank. So I hope you guys have all at least read that far. If not, again, the play is online. The acted out play is the exact same as what you guys are reading, and there's a audio book version on there too. I think I got it at Walmart, so I don't think they're particularly hard to find, these types of shirts. But so since I have you guys all here, what we're going to go over today is cause and effect. So you guys see cause and effect all the time. Cause and effect being one thing happens, so another thing happens. Now, a lot of times people get taught cause and effect as a simple like A plus B equals C. Like I threw a basketball on the ground, was my A, my B would be the ball bounces back up, and the C would be like I get the ball back, right? So a lot of times though, cause and effect is more complex than that, because you could say something in class a bunch of times and not get caught. Like say, who's here? Say Madison. Say Madison threw a stress ball at someone in class 5 times and never got caught. So Madison's A is throwing the stress ball. The B is it hits somebody, and the C is nothing. No, she never gets caught, right? But then, like, say she does that a sixth time, and then she gets caught doing it and gets in trouble. Like, then it's still the same A, it's still the same B, but there's also partly because everyone suggests that they'd be better off if they just got caught right now, which causes Mrs. Frank to kind of like yell at her for a little bit, tell her that she should be ashamed of herself. Now, there's a really important quote that I want to go over. See if you can see that, if I hold that up. Well, it didn't work super well, but it's on the website in Google Classrooms, the notes that I'm going over, so you can just read it there, and I'll read it to you in my teacher voice. We're young, Margot and Peter and I, you grown-ups, look at us. If we begin thinking of all the horrors in the world, we're lost. It isn't our fault that the world is such a mess. We weren't around when all this started, so don't try to take it out on us. So this is kind of one of those classic youth versus adult moments where young people realize that there are a lot of problems in the world, and they had nothing to do with it. It's not their fault. And like blaming the older generation, right, for the way the world is. So Anne's upset that her mother is telling her how she should feel in this situation, and Anne's suggesting that like this isn't our fault. We had nothing to do with like the reason why the Nazis hate Jews or Gypsies or any of the other groups. So don't try to like blame us for the situation. Again, Anne's mom isn't really trying to blame her, but it's just kind of that conception, right? So the scene continues. It fades with Anne running to her room to try to get some privacy. And again, she shares that room with Dussel, so she can't get away permanently from everybody. But Peter follows into the room. They begin to articulate their frustration towards adults. Peter, at this point, is very impressed with Anne. Up to this point, they've kind of joked back and forth some. They've kind of hinted that they have feelings for each other now and again. But Peter here actually just comes out and compliments Anne, saying that she's very good at articulating her feelings, and he's really impressed because anytime he gets upset, he just gets frustrated and can't speak, right? So we saw that with him and Dussel. We saw that with him and his father. He just loses his ability to talk because, again, he's a 16, 17-year-old boy. He gets frustrated really easily, and he just can't think of words to say. He just wants to kind of break something when he gets that mad, which I'm sure a lot of teenage boys can relate to. So Peter says that he's very impressed with her. Anne takes the compliment well here. She also offers him some pictures from her room to decorate his room. He has his own room, but it's like this little closet, and we know there are rats in there, so it's not like particularly, cozy room. So they both kind of demonstrate feeling back and forth. Also, when Anne ran away to her room, she forgot to take her cake with her. Mr. Van Dam was actually going to steal and eat it, and Peter safeguarded that and took the cake to her, which was his excuse for going to her room in the first place. That way the adults didn't think it was like two teenagers running off together. So that shows like some more caring towards another character, that Peter's like actually got some level of devotion towards Anne. And again, like his resentment towards his father, right? He was mad at his father for the coat situation. He was mad at his father for the cat. We're not sure what happened to the cat. We know it disappeared. We know the father wasn't very supportive of it and suggested that the cat needed to go anyways. So his relationship with his father is kind of deteriorating, and here's him just subtly standing up to his father and making sure he doesn't steal this cake from a little girl. They both confide in each other here. They both talk about how they both need a place to get away. Peter offers his room to Anne, like she can come visit whenever she wants. That way she can get away from Dussel, because Anne again reiterates that she and Dussel don't get along. She refers to him as Your Majesty. While she's talking about Dussel, Dussel actually tries to come into the room because, again, that's his room too. And Peter kind of chases him away. He doesn't say anything to him, but he kind of walks at him menacingly, which I'm sure, like, you guys know what I'm talking about here, kind of just like giving the guy a mean look and walking towards him, and Dussel backs away. So Dussel's kind of like, cowardly, he panics easily. So being a teenager, 16, 17, Peter's able to scare him away in this situation. So the scene ends with like normal, where Anne kind of just like recaps what's going on, and there's another time jump. So this act begins on New Year, so January 1st, and it jumps all the way to March. So Anne mentions that she's getting closer with Peter. She doesn't really say like they're in love or anything, but she mentions that they're spending together. She also mentions that she's learned that the Americans and the Allies have landed in Italy. So like for you World War II buffs, that would be like Patton's Corps has taken care of Rommel in Africa, and like they're starting to push up through Italy. So Italy's pretty far if you think of a map from Norway. D-Day, where the Americans, the British, and the other allies land on the beach of Normandy, which is in France, is much closer to the Franks, but that hasn't happened yet. That doesn't happen until the summer. I want to say June. I'm not a history teacher though, but like seems like early summer. I'll have to ask Mr. Andrews later on. But she knows the Americans are coming. There's a lot of hope there. Meep informs them that the person who supplied them with the ration books that they're using to get them food has actually been arrested. So they had these extra 3 ration books they were using to feed the 8 people living up there. And those people have been arrested, so she can't use those ration books anymore, or she'll get in trouble. It doesn't seem as though the person she bought the ration books knows who she is, so she doesn't get informed on, but they have less food now. And then again, if we shift back to the whole notion of dramatic irony, we know that Mr. Van Dam's actually stealing some food as well, so there's even less food there than there should be. The cat disappearing kind of like plays in with that too. When we learned the cat disappeared, Dussel suggested it's probably been eaten by somebody. We never really find out what happens to the cat, but like that's just like one more possibility, that the cat was found by someone who was hungry and it was killed, and that's another thing kind of weighing on Peter. Mr. Crawler ends up in the hospital. He had mentioned that he was feeling sick before, but couldn't get to a doctor because just all the doctors were so busy with the war going on and so many people being sick from not having enough to eat, and just the general stressful situation. But it ends up being bad enough that he does end up having to go to the hospital. And that kind of parallels with their concern for Margot. Margot at the beginning of the chapter had been, or beginning of the act rather, had been sick, and they'd been giving her medicine, just random pills to try to keep her better because they couldn't take her to a doctor. And they were afraid if she coughed too much that the factory workers below would hear, and then even more people would know that they were up here. And since we already have that blackmailing situation, that could be, the danger of that could be amplified as well. Dussel remains worried about the blackmailer and talks about it quite a bit, but no one else seems to be concerned with it. So it looks like Mr. Frank's like half bribe, I guess, the raise he offers seems to have worked. Now, we're not sure if the person who kind of blackmailed was really trying to blackmail or if he really did just want to raise, but that certainly looks, if you like examine it, like it kind of looks as though he was trying to blackmail, but he at least was, satisfied with the half raise. So again, that's kind of a short scene. I think that's the shortest scene in the entire play. The important things going on in this chapter are a little bit character development with Peter, the conflicts between Peter and Dussel, Peter and his father, the Van Dams. You're seeing how like being stuck in here has kind of amplified minor disagreements that become really big disagreements. You wouldn't expect someone to threaten someone with a knife over a piece of cake, but that seems as though it's about to happen. You wouldn't expect an adult to make fun of a teenager who's lost his cat and who's upset, but that happens. You wouldn't expect the husband to steal his wife's coat, but that happens. So like being stuck in these confined places just kind of amplifies all their frustrations, and they can't take their frustrations out on the Nazis or the Green Police, the people they're really upset with. So they take them apart against everyone else. And the only people who really don't seem to be terribly affected by this are Mr. Frank. And to a lesser extent, Anne, because she still remains hopeful throughout. Another big thing here is we get more information about Mr. Frank. Mr. Frank talks very little in this act, but Peter and Anne both talk about him. They also talk a lot about Mr. Dussel. So you get a lot of character development secondhand from the teenagers as they're talking about the adults. So we know they don't respect Dussel really at all. Peter like expresses frustration towards him, and expresses frustration towards him. They both express frustration towards how the Van Dams argue back and forth, and Anne doesn't consider that to be very adult-like. So she kind of judges them kind of harshly there. But they both mention that they respect Mr. Frank, but Anne also kind of suggests that she's not comfortable telling him all of her like feelings and her thoughts just because he's an adult, and she finds like there's a disconnect between even Mr. Frank and her. Even though she likes and cares and respects for him, she still doesn't think she's able to confide in him as well as she could to one of her friends or someone her age, which is why having Peter there is such like a big deal to her, because she can treat him just like one of her peers at school, which is something she misses. And she does have Margot, but they don't seem to have that close-knit, I can tell you all my secrets type of relationship. Peter seems to deal better in the annex just because he had mentioned he was always a bit of a loner, and he seems to spend a lot of time by himself in his room. So it kind of suggests that he's handling the situation a little bit better than Anne being very outgoing and social. So you can kind of like make a parallel between her and maybe someone in the class that you can think of who talks a lot, likes to interact socially a lot. There's probably some parallels there. So we only have a few minutes left, so if you guys have any questions, that would be a good time to ask those. I put a lot of things up on Google Classrooms already. There's some vocab quizzes for Act 4 and 5 from the first, I'm sorry, Scene 4 and 5 from the first act, one over all of Act 1, and then a quiz for Scene 1, which is what we just went over of Act 2. I'll probably add Scene 2's quiz later today or tomorrow, and probably another vocab review. I don't want to overwhelm you guys, so if you guys feel overwhelmed with how much materials on Google Classrooms, don't worry about getting a ton done every day. Just try to do like one thing every day or every other day. Try to keep yourselves busy. Don't go stir crazy. And I definitely not saying don't have to do it. Like definitely do it. But if you feel overwhelmed, take a break, and I'll keep adding things, but don't panic if you don't get every single thing on there done. So I think I wrote down everyone's name who is here. If I missed somebody, I apologize for that. And again, if you have any questions as to how to complete an assignment, someone sent a text, or not text, a message to me through Google Classrooms yesterday. And really, like, the questions are very similar to like what we do in class anyway. So just like a short 1-2 sentence response is fine for a question of the day that's on there. So it was nice interacting with all you guys. I did get you, Nick. I just underlined it to be short. And have a good day. Stay safe and all of that. Ethan, good question. So there's no set due date. So just kind of do things at your own pace. So don't, I didn't get you, Tristan, so I'm glad you said something. So back to you, Ethan, though. There's no set due date, just kind of work at your own pace. Yeah, if you focus on the Google Classroom stuff and you don't get as much of your packet done, that's fine. If you get mostly packet stuff done and a little bit of the Google Classroom stuff, that's fine too. Just kind of like whichever fits your home situation. If you don't have regular access to a computer, focus on the packet. If you have regular access to a computer, use Google Classrooms. Up to you. Did I get a haircut? I think I buzzed it down yesterday. I think. I don't know. All the days kind of blend together. But yeah, I buzzed it down. All right. Talk to you guys later. It's nice seeing you, and I'll see you on Tuesday.